Okay, so let's go ahead and continue our work with 6.2 on polynomials by talking about how we add and subtract them. So the first thing I want to talk about is the idea of in subtraction, we always change to add the opposite. So if you had 5 minus 3, that would be, well, you already know that that's 2, right? So instead of saying subtract 3, we could have 5 plus negative 3, and sometimes people just put the negative in parentheses so that you see that the number is negative. What is 5 plus negative 3? Also 2. So right here in step 1, it says, if subtracting, distribute the negative sign. Alternatively, write subtraction as add the opposite. That's exactly what we're doing here. I just proved why when you add the opposite, that's the same exact step. So that's why, that can get confusing. With this, really the thing that gets the most confusing for people is the subtracting. So what we're going to do here is we're going to remove the parentheses using the associative property, meaning we can add these numbers. Once we're adding, we can add them in any order. Combine like terms using the associative and distributive properties. Like terms must have, so like terms, this word like terms means that they have the same variables raised to the same exponents. So some examples of like terms would be x squared and 3x squared, right? The coefficient is different, so I have a different number of how many I have, but they have the same variable, same exponent. Would x squared and y squared be like terms? No, these are actually not like terms. Just because they have the same exponents, they have different variables. Okay, so what we're going to do is follow the steps here. There's no subtraction actually happening here. It's addition. So what we're going to do is I'm going to group together the like terms. I'm going to say 5x is a like term with negative 8x. And I could write that as I could actually write that as 5x plus negative 8x, right? And then the constants are negative 7, so plus negative 7, plus negative 3. Negative 7 minus 3. That's the same thing. Plus negative 7 plus negative 3 is the same thing. Okay, so once we simplify, once we combine our like terms, since these two are alike, we have 5x minus 8x is how many x's? Negative 3x. Negative 7 plus negative 3 is negative 10. And notice we're not solving anything. All we're doing is simplifying. So there's no, divide. We're not trying to get x on one side by itself. This is just combining like terms. These are both expressions. This is just an expression that we're adding to another expression, okay? Here, when we subtract, we need to distribute the negative sign. That's what step 1 is telling us, okay? So I'm going to rewrite this as 4x plus 1 minus 9x, and then distribute that negative to the 5 because I want to subtract the whole thing, minus 5. Does everybody see how I got those signs switched? Because of that, subtraction is really the same thing as adding the opposite. Okay, so now our like terms are 4x and negative 9x. I can write that together, plus negative 9x. And 1 minus 5, plus 1 minus 5. So once we combine our like terms, what do we get? 4x minus 9x is negative 5x. Good. And 1 minus 5 is negative 4. Okay? Are we getting the hang of that there? It doesn't really matter, but if it helps you to see that plus a negative, so she's saying, should it be written like this, plus negative 4? It's exactly the same thing. This is not more correct. It's just sometimes people have a hard time realizing the negative really belongs to that 4, right? Either is fine. And then let's all write them in standard form. So let's put the variable term first. Okay, so I'm debating whether or not to try this with you guys, I'm going to have you try those other examples. Maybe we'll just do the fraction one together at the end. Does that help? Okay, so here, again, we see the subtraction, so we want to distribute the negative, right? So I'm going to rewrite that 2/3 t squared plus 2/5 minus 3/4 t. And then what's a negative times a negative? Does everybody see why at the end I have a positive 1/3? Okay. Now, are there any like terms here that I can add together? What are the like terms? So can I add these two together? Are these like terms? Why not? Oh, so yes, this one has a squared, this one has, okay, so let's just put them in order. 2/3 t squared minus 3/4 t. And then we have our constants here, right, with the signs, positive 2 constants. So I'm going to have plus 2/5 plus 1/3. Now, who can remember how do I add those two fractions together? I have to have a common denominator. What is the common denominator between 3 and 5? 15. So I have to multiply this one by 3/3. I have to multiply this one by 5/5. And I'm going to get 6/15 plus 5/15 is 11/15. Okay, so I should write each step of the way, but anyway, I just did the fractions on the side here. So our answer is 2/3 t squared minus 3/4 t plus the 11/15, right? Again, there's no need to like clear fractions. You can only really clear fractions when it's an equation, and this is not an equation. This is an expression. Since I have all these equal signs lined up, I'm going to go ahead and put the rest of this work down because it just is bothering me. Okay. All right. Any questions on that? So I'm going to have you try the rest of these problems now, and we'll share out on the answers.